Happy Good Friday, everybody, in time for episode number 2 of the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast. And, you know, with Easter coming up on Sunday, it's only 2 days away. And boy, does that bring back memories for me. The family would always get together. Thanksgiving, Easter, Christmas, and all in all, it would be a pretty good time, except when my Uncle Dick showed up, which he almost always did. Now, we all have an Uncle Dick, don't we? A guy who's kind of the black sheep of the family and nobody wants to be around. Well, he'd walk in and he'd kind of be normal for a little while, and then he'd start drinking. He'd get a couple of pops. And then the insults would start. He'd start mentioning which women had gained the most weight, which men were poorly dressed and didn't look good, and start bringing up old stories nobody wanted to talk about. My grandmother was great at origami, and she always made a beautiful design to put on the center of the dinner table. And one year my uncle walked in, he looked at it, and he said, well, the first thing we're going to do is get rid of this damn thing. And he threw it in the garbage can, ticking everybody off. One year he insulted my mother, and he and my father, who was his brother, went outside and got into a fist fight in the backyard with shirts and ties on, with everybody there, with the kids around. That's how bad it was with Uncle Dick. So hopefully you have a better Easter coming up on Sunday than I used to have when I was a kid. But you know what else is always a good thing? I always love having Billy Dieckman on as a guest, and he's coming up here momentarily. A member of the Kiowa tribe, a former United States Marine, a former mixed martial arts fighter, a former football player. And what caught my attention a couple of years ago when I first heard about him, he was working for an organization called NAGA, Native American Guardians Association, and they'd filed a lawsuit against the Washington Commanders demanding that they change their name back to Redskins. I said, wow, that's interesting. That's interesting, a Native American saying that. And then I did a little bit of research on it before I had Billy on. And turned out that 75 to 90% of Native Americans are not offended by the name, and they think it's a source of honor and courage and pride on the battlefield. And that the term redskin had nothing to do with skin color. It was war paint that the warriors would put on their bodies before they went into battle. They put it on their face and put it on their bodies, and only the bravest, only the most accomplished, only the most respected warriors would get to put the war paint on. So I said, he might be onto something here. You know, it has nothing to do with skin color. And if 75 to 90% of Native Americans aren't offended, why would anyone else have a problem with it? And then you know what it always is. It's a bunch of white politicians in Washington, D.C. trying to be politically correct. They seem to be the only ones offended by this. But, of course, the Washington Redskins caved in, changed their name to the Washington Football Team, and then the Commanders. But I tell you what, Billy Dieckman was with NAGA at the time. Now he's with SONS, S-O-N-S, Save Our Native Souls, and continuing the fight here. And he wants the Redskins name back, saying it's a source of honor. It's a source of pride, something to be proud of if you're Native American. So this is going to be good. Let's bring him on now, a good friend of the show, and we always love talking sports and always love talking about this subject with him. Here he is, the great Billy Dieckman. What's up, Billy?
Hey, Dave. Good to talk to you, friend.
So what started this? I know you were a football player and a mixed martial arts fighter and a former Marine, and what was the incentive here, and as a lifelong football fan, to sue the Washington Commanders to try to get them to change their name back to Redskins?
Well, Dave, first and foremost, I'll spare you the long story, but I go back to being a Redskins fan from the earliest days I remember seeing when they changed their logo on the helmet. And then in 5th grade, I actually got to play for my midget league team. I played for the Redskins. And it's the only champion trophy that I have in my house that I keep up. Everything else is in a box somewhere. So beyond proud of it, we go back to the term Redskins. The way it's been completely mistaken is for people to say that, well, that means a bloody scalp, or that's derogatory, or that's like calling Indians a racial slur. It's actually a status symbol of an elite warrior. We started out as the Boston Braves, the football team, and they won several championships long before there was a Super Bowl. And their team owner wanted to honor them and said, "How do we do this?" And they said, "Well, you know, there's already a Braves team, and pretty much Braves are your foot soldiers. We're kind of elite, you know, with the way we've played and the championships we've won. We'd like to have that name that represents that of an elite warrior. They want to be the Redskins." So they made it happen. along the line, it got taken over and hijacked by special interest group, the media for sure, but the National Congress of American Indians really, really went after this with deep funding from George Soros.
Wow. Billy Dieckman joining Dave Smith here on Dave Smith Unleashed podcast. And, and if you do any research at all on this, the term Redskins, well, again, not a racial slur and had nothing to do with skin color. It was warriors before they went into battle would put red paint on their face and on their bodies. And only the elite warriors, only the most courageous on the battlefield were allowed to put on the war paint and go into battle. It was a tribute to honor, courage, and bravery on the battlefield. It had nothing to do with skin color.
Absolutely. And that's why the colors red and black are so important in Indian warfare. Red means you're ready for war, and your elite warriors get to participate in the blood root ceremony to paint their skin red, and then everybody comes back with black. That they've used the ashes of their enemy's fire to paint themselves black coming home. So it's very significant, and it's childish to think that it means bloody scalp or is a derogatory name. And the media was paid to say it, and they ran with it.
And most Native American or Indian or whatever you want to call yourself, Billy, are 75 to 90% of most polls I've seen say they are not offended by the name Redskins, and they want to change the name back to the Washington Redskins. And it seems like the people most offended are white politicians in suits and ties back in Washington, D.C., not the Native Americans.
Exactly. They're offended at what they're told to be offended at and what they've been paid to be offended with. As far as names, I myself, I'll accept either. I don't mind referring to myself or being called Native American. I cannot stand when I'm forced to say it, especially by a non-native. I personally grew up calling myself Indian. Everything back home in Oklahoma is Indian. Like the Indian Fair, Indian fry bread. Everything. Nobody says Native. Nobody says Native American. That's the politically correct side of it. But for some reason, that's been forced upon us, and I don't appreciate it, and I don't get it.
One of my roommates in college was a Lakota, and he'd want to step outside and challenge you to a fist fight if you called him a Native American. He said, I'm an Indian, and all the school paperwork, when they asked for race and they asked for your background, like applying for student loans and everything, he would cross out Native American and write in red ink Indian in there next to it. He hated that term.
Red pen, did he?
He hated that term.
That is excellent. No, my daughter Jaden. She doesn't like to mark the box other. She'll write on forms Indian. That's funny.
It's interesting, and we all know Walter Wetzel, who was a very important guy. He was the president of the National Congress of American Indians back in the day. He was the chairman of the Blackfeet tribe, and very important guy. There's pictures of him in the White House meeting with President Kennedy, meeting with President Johnson, and he's watching the Redskins game one day, and he saw, their helmet used to have a spear on the side, and he's on his television, and he said, hey, you know what? They need to get a real Indian on the side of that helmet. This isn't good enough. So he went to the Washington Redskins offices. He met with George Allen and the owner and Jack Kent Cook, and he drew the design himself. And they said, hey, this is great. And the picture on the side of the helmet was Chief Two Guns Whitecalf, who is an American hero, Billy. He was so respected in America. He was on currency with the Buffalo nickel.
Yes.
He went to the White House in the early 30s when the Blackfeet tribe was not getting the money they were promised by the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, John Collier. And John said, hey, go back home. I'll send you a check. And Chief Two Guns Whitecalf said, I ain't leaving. I'll sit here all day long like my father did back in 1903 when he died in President Teddy Roosevelt's private chamber fighting for Indian rights. And he said, I would rather sleep on the streets and eat garbage than leave here without my money. The next day he got his check. He's an American hero, and you would think it would be a great honor for an NFL team to have his picture on the side of the helmet.
Well, it is, and in doing what they did, the NFL helped the woke movement eradicate the only minority representation on an NFL uniform. Think about that. they're fighting racism supposedly by erasing and eradicating Chief Two Guns White Calf from the side of a helmet, which was not born with nothing but honor every single time they took the field. The family is very hurt by this. They want it back.
And again, his father in 1903 went to Washington, D.C. to lobby President Teddy Roosevelt on behalf of the Blackfeet tribe and American Indians. And he wound up dying in Teddy Roosevelt's private chamber of pneumonia, I believe, because it was so cold there in D.C. at the time. And then his son, Chief Two Guns White Calf, as we just mentioned in the early 30s, carried on the same tradition. Said, "I'm not leaving this room," he told the president, "till I get the money we were promised." And he wound up getting the money. And again, so respected, he was on American currency, on the Buffalo nickel. This man was an American hero.
Absolutely was, through and through. I mean, if it's not on the battlefield, it's in the battlefield, in the trenches, in the D.C. offices. I mean, the man was amazing through and through. His whole family is, and that's why we have so much pride for being able to represent him on not only our uniforms in our hearts, but across the nation. You mentioned earlier, there have been several independent surveys taken across the nation. Native American population, American Indian population, 100% has pride and courage through everything. 90%, no less than 90% polled, stated they were very proud of the Chief Two Guns White Calf on the helmet and the name Redskins. So, of the 10%, after things were explained to them, got a few more of them to understand, okay, and then the rest just really don't care. They don't care about football. They're not going to watch it. It means nothing to them, and that's okay. But 90%, and you're going to strip this? It's crazy.
And I remember back when you were with NAGA, Native American Guardians Association, and a lawsuit was filed against the Redskins to try to get the Commanders to try to get the name changed back to Redskins. Now you're with Save Our Native Sons, the organization. Is there any chance? I know Josh Harris, the new owner of the Commanders, is pretty dead set against ever changing the name back. You think, is there any chance this could happen, or is it just going to be you trying to raise awareness of the situation?
At first, I thought that he just had to say that because they basically needed a little bit of time to, get their feet wet. They just took over the team. In fact, nothing has to happen overnight. By the same token, we would still like a seat at the table, whether it be with NAGA or with Sons or a mixture of both. We just really want to be able to educate the team, the owners, so that they can understand how prestigious this name is, what it means to Native America, and exactly how big a mistake they made here. The 10% that kind of helped get it toppled, they are not buying your jerseys. They're not sitting in your seats. They're not in the stadium. So at first he said that, he made that statement, and everybody was like, okay, well, he said it's never going to happen. Well, thank goodness they're not leading the fight, because I'm not willing to give up. I will Chief Two Guns White Calf it myself if I have to go to D.C. and not leave. But we have other ways to do that nowadays, and I think we have a good game plan. The lawsuit itself kind of stalled out just a little bit. It's still pending, but I guess the court that originally in North Dakota, their ruling said that it had to go through Virginia, which is the Commander's business state. So NAGA's going to have to file again. And with the strong leadership of people like Andre Bilodeau, I truly believe that they can accomplish anything.
And, it's not going to be easy. You're going to have the media against you. You're going to have the politically correct woke National Football League. And most people, if you're not aware of the situation or haven't studied any of the history here, well, Redskins, oh, my God, what a racist name. You're talking about Redskin. And when you don't understand that it was war paint going into battle, that it was a tribute to honor, courage, and bravery on the battlefield, that the picture on the side of the helmet was of a great American hero by the name of Two Guns Chief White Calf, John White Calf. I think if people just did the minimal amount of research here and actually spoke with people of Indian heritage, I think they would change their opinion on this, because it seems, as we mentioned earlier, Billy, it seems like only woke white people, especially in D.C., are offended by this name.
Exactly. If we had 20 minutes, we could educate the owners to the point that they would not only embrace the name, they would be able to intelligently defend it from here on.
Well, if Native American people are fine with the name, if they're proud of it, they're proud of the heritage, they're proud of Chief Two Guns White Calf, well, shouldn't that be it? That should be okay with everybody then. If the Native American people, by a large majority, are not offended by it and are proud of the name, why the continued effort to try to change the name by people who don't share your heritage and sitting in Washington, D.C. in suits and ties?
No poor me's here. I was born with every opportunity everybody else has. I was born in 1969. I've lived a very successful life, but we are the only race that's allowed to happen to. America goes up in arms if you insult any other race except ours. You know, everybody likes to say, oh, poor Indians, they lost their land, we kicked their ass, took their land. Well, guess what? The little bit that we have, we want back. We're willing to fight tooth and nail to get it back.
Billy Dieckman joined in the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast, former mixed martial arts fighter, former football player, former United States Marine, and now filing lawsuits and trying to get the Washington Commanders to change their name back to Washington Redskins, kind of going against the narrative here that we read in the media and we read from politicians in Washington, D.C., that it's a racist moniker. And you made a great point earlier with Chief Two Guns White Calf, who was such an American hero that this is the only symbol in the National Football League on a uniform or on a helmet of a minority, and yet people were fighting to get him off of there and saying that that's not right, that he's on the side of the Redskins helmet.
I wish they would take 5 minutes to listen to his family and find out exactly how deeply this hurts, how bad this is, and what a travesty it is. That's a lot of history that just got erased. And the NFL embraced the erasure of all this, and it's sickening. I'm not done fighting. Andre Bildu's not done fighting. Naga's not done fighting. We are going to, at the very least, be heard. And if they choose to do otherwise, even after that, we'll figure out phase 2 and continue fighting.
You know, when I tell people about this, because most people are uneducated on the subject, they just hear Redskins and they think it's a racist term. And when I tell people it's not skin color, it's red war paint on the faces and on the bodies, and it's a tribute to courage and honor and bravery on the battlefield, and only the bravest, most accomplished warriors were allowed to do it before they went into battle. And the picture on the side of the helmet was an American hero by the name of Chief Two Guns White Calf, who went to Washington, demanded his money and got it. And it was actually on American currency. When people hear all that, they say, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Maybe I was wrong about this.
The media was paid very well to have that narrative, and they ran with it. That's over 2 decades of the media telling people this is racist, this is bad, this is horrible. There's a gentleman named Ray Halbritter who kind of really helped launch this as well before teaming up with what used to be when the National College of American Indians Institute, when they first started out, they were a very pro-Indian faction. They were very pro-Indian, and that changed drastically after Soros money and leadership changed. So, you have that combined with Ray Halbritter's casino billions fighting for this, because he wanted everybody to have to rent it from him, and when he couldn't have it, nobody could have it, type of thing. So he employed a gal, a beautiful Indian woman named Amanda Blackhorse, to basically go everywhere there was a game with whether it be Redskins or Chiefs, or to stage the protest. It's like, man, these are bought and paid for actors. And it was very effective. So you were right. We are against the NFL. We are against the media. Well, I should say they're against us. So in all reality, nothing's changed. We're used to that. We're used to being everybody against us and being outnumbered and nobody believing in our cause. and those who there are a lot that do, because they want it back as well. This was a part of their history, a part of their fanhood. Like I said, I'm a lifetime Redskins fan, and that'll never change. So I'm happy to fight against what has been absolutely oppressive in eradication over all these years.
You know, and by my way of thinking, Billy, it's kind of racist to change the name from Redskins, because what you're saying is, since the vast majority of Indian Native American people are not offended by the name, this is a bunch of white people saying, well, you're just not bright enough to know when you're being insulted. You're not educated enough to know that this is a racist term. We can make these decisions for you because you're not smart enough to do it yourselves. To me, that's even more racist than anybody talking about the name.
Yeah, let's take it from this beautiful warrior name and rename it to the people who hunted and killed these warriors. What sense does that make? Yes.
You're talking about Commanders, that name? Yeah, the genesis of that name. Now, how is that offensive to Native Americans, the Commanders name?
Because those are the people that hunted and killed natives and were trying to clear the land. So we've gone from something that represented us to something that was 100% against us.
But you would think, you being a former Marine and mixed martial arts fighter and football player, a red-blooded American through and through, but 100% Kiowa Indian, if anybody would be offended, I mean, if you thought this was an offensive name, you'd be leading the charge to change the name.
In fact, the one thing I'm really, really upset about, besides the NFL erasing the only minority representation, especially under the guise of fighting racism, not only did they not stop to find out what exactly the name means, FedEx should have been the first ones that led the charge to keep the name, because they invested $70 million 30 years ago. And it's like, why wouldn't you at least find out what your team is all about that you've made this big purchase on and you've invested so heavily in? They didn't even take the time to do that. They were part of the first parts to fold and giving it up. But there used to be a team called the Buffalo All-Americans. If they were still named the Buffalo All-Americans, I'd probably have been a big fan a long time ago. They chose to change their name to Buffalo Bills to honor Buffalo Bill Cody. And on the side of their helmet is not an American hero. It's a buffalo with a blood stripe coming off the horn. That is a slap in the face to all of Native America. Yet the NFL has zero problem with it, and the media has zero problem with it. So tell me how that's fair. And like I said, no poor me's here. I'm going to continue this fight. It's stuff like that drives me.
Well, that's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that, because, the buffalo was the main source of hunting and food for Native American tribes back in the day. And the American army and settlers were the ones who wiped out the buffalo and took away the food source and weakened the Indian. That's a very good point.
That's the most beautiful animal in the world. And yeah, it was our lifeblood. So, I mean, and by all means, fact check me, look into it. Don't just take my word for it. But I mean, it amazes me that the NFL is okay with that. It gets me fired. I mean, sorry, I'm stammering because my blood starts boiling every time I think about it and explain that to somebody, because it just all over again. I'm thinking of the injustice we've suffered having them, NFL and the woke movement, the National Congress of American Indian with the Soros money and Ray Halberger, all that combined to tumble our beautiful, traditional, historical team, and then they let something like this happen and they actually fund it. It's amazing to me.
It's so fascinating. Are Native American tribes and Indians, are they trying to get the Buffalo Bills to change their name? And I'm sure that's probably more offensive than the term Redskins. Is there a movement for them to change the name?
And I'm surprised at how many people have not made that connection. But nothing against the Buffalo Bills themselves, but I can't stand that. It wasn't so much that, we lost ours, now we want everybody else to lose theirs. Reinstate ours and take a look at that. I would love it if they changed back to the Buffalo All-Americans. I'd probably root for them then.
Yeah. And you talked about the original Washington Redskins back in the 30s. They weren't the Redskins originally, but when the owner, George Preston Marshall, changed the name, it was in honor of their first head coach, William Lone Star Dietz, who was a Sioux Indian, and they had 4 Indian players on the team. I think a lot of people don't understand that as well.
Yes, they did. That's just it. I mean, we were born. This team was born in American history.
It's unbelievable. I got a funny story to tell you as well. I have an ex-girlfriend who was a Native American, and from Oklahoma, and she took me back to meet her family one time years and years ago. So we fly into Oklahoma City, and then we're driving like 3 hours into the middle of nowhere. And in the car on the way over there, she says, "Well, I should tell you this right now. You might have to put up your hands." And I said, "What? What does that mean?" She said, "Fight." I said, "Fight? You're telling me this now? I mean, we can't turn around and go back." And she said, "Well, my brothers and my cousins and my uncles, they need to know that if somebody puts their hands on me or I have a problem, they need to know that you can protect me, that you're man enough to stand up. And plus, a lot of times, we get bored and, after, family get-togethers, we have bare-knuckle boxing in the backyard. So just get ready."
Or what's called a Tuesday in Oklahoma.
So then we get to the house and we get to the house, and I looked at her brothers and her uncles and her cousins, all tough-looking guys. I said, "Oh, my God, I'm going to get my ass kicked today." Fortunately, Billy, though, they had mercy. I didn't have to put the hands up. I made a good impression on them, I think.
That's a lot of people don't understand Oklahoma, and you really can't until you visit Oklahoma. But like I told you, where I'm from, Lawton, the cheerleaders will fight you.
And I could tell when I walked into that house, the look that I got from her family, especially all the men, and it's the tough-looking guys with the lines on their face and the piercing eye and the strong jaw lines. I said, "Man, these guys are fighters here. I'm in big trouble."
Well, hopefully she was there to protect you.
Well, she could kick my ass too. That was the problem with the whole thing. Dave Smith Unleashed podcast brought to you by MTS Transportation. Call them at 800-640-6873. Reliable on-time delivery, compliance you can count on, round-the-clock support, superior communication, experienced logistic partners, and mention the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast and get 20% off on your next shipment. So, would you say it's probably never going to happen that the name gets changed back to Redskins, especially with the owner, Josh Harris, having so much money and influence, a multi-billionaire, the other owners, the powerful multi-billion-dollar National Football League, the media? Nobody wants this, so this is going to be a real uphill battle to get this accomplished.
It absolutely is, but this is a battle we're dug into, invested in, and are not going to quit. They obviously have the final say because they're the owners, but we truly, truly believe that if they even sat down and talked to us for even 20 minutes, that they would not only restore the name, they would embrace it, and they would intelligently defend it.
I sent you an email earlier. Somebody put up a great tweet. It was a picture of the Redskins helmet with Chief Two Guns White Calf on it, and on the top it said, "How woke do you have to be?" When the helmet was designed by a Blackfoot Indian, that the model was a Blackfoot Indian by the name of Chief Two Guns White Calf, that it was approved by Blackfeet Nation, and yet we have to change the name because it defends white America.
And it's sad but true, but it's like, man, exactly. That's exactly in a nutshell. It's like you wanted to erase racism by taking the maiden off the butter after 100 years. Okay.
And another argument too that people make with me when I point this stuff out and they say, "Well, I didn't know that." Well, it's not a racist or skin color term. It was a war paint term. And Chief Two Guns White Calf wasn't American here. You're correct about that. But then the excuse they make after that, Billy Dieckman, is, "Well, but over time the term has changed. It might not have been a racist term back then, but it certainly is now, and it refers to skin color and it's an insult." That's the argument they make. The definition has changed over over the years.
Well, only because they changed it to fit their narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. Now me, Billy, I'm of Irish heritage, and I watch Notre Dame football on Saturdays, and I see that little guy over there,
Yes,
the little leprechaun they have on the sidelines, and he's dressed up in green pants and pointy shoes, and he's carrying a shillelagh, and he's doing somersaults, and he's running around there. And you talk about a stereotype. All that's missing is a bottle of Jameson's in his hand, turning him into an alcohol. Well, shouldn't I be fighting to get that name changed? That's insulting to me as an Irish American.
See, and that's another point that we try to make. What you just described, that's a mascot. We do not have a mascot. We have a real human being, an American hero on the side of the helmet. There's nobody dressed up, running around. It's just, that's the difference. And, mascots can be offensive if you let it be. Personally, I say if Notre Dame loves and embraces their leprechaun, keep him. Don't ever give him up. By the same token, I just can't have what you described, suits and ties in D.C. making the decisions that they really don't care what football team wears what. They were told to say that. They were paid to say that, and they were instructed to get rid of it. And so I just want a fair shake like everybody else gets.
And the most insulting thing, as we talked about earlier, was it's a bunch of white people in Washington, D.C., and in the National Football League offices saying, well, you Native Americans aren't intelligent enough and you're not smart enough. You don't understand that you're being insulted, so just let us make these decisions for you, and you'll all be better off. How condescending is that?
Well, I can tell you this. I'm not allowed to hunt on my own family's land in Oklahoma, because we're not intelligent enough to keep our own land and to even buy it back because of treaties that were made over 150 years ago to rent it out to ranchers from Texas, all the way up into Oklahoma.
Wow. Tell us one more time before we let you go. You said the ancestors of Chief Two Guns White Calf are furious about this, that an American hero and somebody they're so proud of was taken off the helmet and the team's name was changed. And is it unanimous in the family there?
Yes.
Are they very upset and furious about this?
100% behind put it back. Fix what you broke. I know that some of the Naga folks were actually in conversation with some of the Chief Two Gun family that they actually spoke. And the commanders actually made a somewhat of a hint that they were going to reconnect with Native America one way or another. And honestly, everybody got excited thinking that the logo would be back with Chief Two Guns, but I think it was in the form of them putting a plaque up at the facility. So it'll be interesting to see when Naga refiles that lawsuit, and if that actually starts making some headway.
God, it's just so ironic to me that American hero who fought for the rights of his people, who went to the White House, who told the president, I ain't leaving till I get that money I was promised. I'll leak garbage in the streets before that ever happens. Wound up getting the money. Was so respected they made American currency after him, the Buffalo nickel, a source of pride being on the side of an NFL team's helmet. What the hell's wrong with that? No, we can't have that. We got to change it. That can't be allowed in the National Football League.
If the nation embraced them enough to put them on currency, how is it racist that this team that was named in his honor named in the honor of warriors, and then using his face as one of the ultimate warriors, how is that racist? I don't get how the media is able to paint that so easily and run with it, but man, it's crazy. People really they don't do their own research and just believe everything they're told to think. That's probably what got us in so much trouble over these last few years.
The former mixed martial arts fighter, the former football player, the former United States Marine, 100% Kiowa Indian, now fighting to try and get the Washington Commanders to change their name back. Billy, how do people get in touch with you if they want to support you in this cause?
I really don't have a big media presence. I have Facebook. I'm Bill Dieckman on there, Dieckman. Other than that, that's really the only social media outlet I have, and that's honestly to promote my comedy. So I'm not a big fan of Facebook. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Are you a comedian
the least
too?
likely comedian.
A stand-up. Oh, wow. How about that? Wow.
When I made the announcement, my wife of 10 years, who's known me since we were 17, is like, "You what?" So I want to do that. So.
I remember back in the day, there used to be a Native American comedian that used to go on the Carson Show all the time. I don't know if you remember him. He had a long ponytail. He was a really big guy. And he came out there and he'd always, Mazola corn goodness. He'd start singing it about the offensive stuff to Indian people. And he said the same thing. I'm an Indian. Don't ever call me a Native American. He was a very, very funny guy. I don't remember his name.
Oh, man, I'm going to have to look that up. I was a big Carson fan, but I wasn't allowed to stay up and watch it. I could just still hear it from my bedroom when my parents were watching it. But for a lot of years. But yeah, I'll have to look that up.
At least you've got Elizabeth Warren as a great representative. She's 1024th Native American. She's the whitest person in America claiming to be a Native American.
Maybe if we asked if they'd put her logo on the side of the helmet, DC could get behind it. Yes.
The Washington Warrens. How about that? There's a new name. Billy, great stuff as always. All the best to you, and thanks once again for your time.
Thank you so much.
And there he goes, Billy Dieckman, the mixed martial arts fighter, the former football player, United States Marine, stand-up comedian, here with Dave Smith on the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast. All right, that closes out the Friday edition of Dave Smith Unleashed, the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast. And don't forget, next week, we are giving away 4 Dodger tickets, courtesy of our good friends, our sponsors at MTS Transportation. So call them at 800-640-6873. Reliable on-time delivery, compliance you can count on, round-the-clock support, superior communication, experienced logistic partners. Mention the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast and get 20% off on all your shipments. So remember, subscribe on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/@ the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, and one of the subscribers is going to win 4 Dodger tickets for April 29th against the Miami Marlins at Dodger Stadium. And, of course, you get the 4 tickets plus preferred parking plus access to the Stadium Club. This is absolutely a great prize, so we'll be picking a winner next week. You know what? Speaking of the Dodgers, a friend of mine was asking me last night, do you think Shohei Ohtani is the greatest Major League Baseball player of all time? Not the greatest Dodger, the greatest player of all time. And I said, you know what? He's only 30 years old, but I think you can make one hell of a case. The only comparison is Babe Ruth, somebody who tried to pitch and hit at the same time. But you know, Babe only did that 1 year. In 1919, the Babe was a full-time pitcher and a full-time hitter. He won 9 games. He had an ERA of 2.97. He had 29 home runs, 113 RBIs, and hit .323, which of course is very good. But Shohei, in 2022, 15-9, 2.33 ERA, plus 34 home runs and 95 RBIs. Then in 2023, the last year he pitched before the elbow injury, 10-5, 34 home runs, 95 RBIs. And then, of course, last year, the 50-50 season, unbelievable, a .310 average with 54 home runs and 59 steals. So, yeah, these are better numbers than Babe Ruth. I think you can make the case, maybe, that Shohei's the greatest player of all time. Of course, we'll get more into that next week. And the next show of the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast is going to be on Tuesday. We're going to post it at noon Pacific time, so make sure you tune in on Tuesday. And how about our special guest? Wow. You know, I'm a real crime nut. I'm a true crime nut. And the best book that I've ever read on the JFK assassination is Case Closed by the great Gerald Posner. And he's coming on as a guest on Tuesday. I can't wait. It is the most well-researched, documented, intelligent book that I've ever read on the assassination called Case Closed, and we're lucky enough to get the author on Tuesday, Gerald Posner. So we'll be talking a little bit about Shohei. Is he the greatest player of all time? All the events over Easter weekend in sports, and Gerald Posner to discuss, in depth, The JFK assassination, and boy, is that in the news now with the files about to be released by the Trump administration. So tune in Tuesday. We're going to post it around noon Pacific time. Gerald Posner, Shohei Ohtani, the greatest player of all time, and Dave Smith Unleashed, the Dave Smith Unleashed podcast. We'll talk to you then.